the session. I'll start it now, just so everyone in the community afterwards can also watch it in the future as well. And if you want to recap and go back to anything that we have commented, you will have the link in the event in the community. And we have also in the community an article where we have a sum up of all the webinars. So if you would also like to see Shiva's previous webinar, you can also check it there. And as always, we try to bring topics that are related to your journey as entrepreneurs, sometimes as mentors, as people who, basically this topic is people who are in a society, who work with people, whether in a personal level or in this case, in your daily business operations, and all the stakeholders that are involved, and how this may impact everyone and all type of interactions we have throughout the day. So I think Shiva is the best person to introduce herself. I also really I enjoy hearing her do so. So without any further ado, if you don't mind, I will pass it to Shiva. And if you have any questions, since we're a small group, I will leave the microphones open unless there's any background noise or anything. I know Shiva is open to questions and to people asking things around. If you have any problem, just also, and you cannot speak or something, you can also send me a message and I'll be here throughout the meeting, okay? Let's do this. Shiva, thank you.
Alex. I'm gonna give you a much shorter introduction to myself than I normally would. So the brief bullet points are, I have been working in cultural intelligence for the past 10 years. I am Iranian, I'm also North American, I'm Jewish, and I'm Muslim. I'm a refugee and an immigrant. I've spent the past 10 years living here in Spain. And on the professional side, I work, as a cultural intelligence expert, and I go around the world working with major corporations. This year, I've worked with Novartis Pharmaceuticals, with Unilever, Nederlanden Nationale, or Nationale Nederlanden, Generali. So a range of large organizations, basically teaching their higher management how to not be assholes. And I do that through teaching them a lot of the basic concepts of cultural intelligence. So that's what I do on one hand. And on the other hand, I'm also the director of a Swiss business school based in Madrid here. So I have two full-time jobs in a sense. And today's topic, the concept of time, is one of many, many, many different concepts within the umbrella of cultural intelligence. So what I'm going to do is first give a couple of just kind of guidelines for the webinar, and then I'll explain a little bit of culture before we actually get into the concept of time. All right, so we'll start from the big and then get down to the small. And I said this every time, I suck ass at webinars. I'm horrible at technology, so I will probably fuck things up. Just expect it, and I'm sorry for it. So great, rules of the game. The three very basic guidelines. First, participation, it is needed. And since we're a small group, it'll just be using your mics. Respect, that's kind of obvious, respecting each other's opinion, time, and the value for the group. This is more valid for a larger group, but the point of this is that these kinds of topics generate a lot of interesting conversation. They also seem to trigger people in the sense that time is a concept that is so personal to everyone, and it creates so much frustration and confusion and misunderstanding that people get really angry at some of the things that I teach. And they go off on discussions, but I don't understand, like, how could you say that? How could this be true? And I'm simply asking that, and telling you, if I see that kind of conversation, it's completely and totally valid and legitimate. But if it's not serving the larger group, then I'm going to ask us to stop that kind of conversation and continue with the webinar. And the last part, which is my favorite, is you are absolutely allowed to not agree with anything that I say, but in this one thing, it doesn't mean that you're right. I've done this for 10 years. It's not just my life, it's also my study, it's my passion, it's my work. You may have lived abroad, worked abroad, worked in sociology even. It doesn't matter. If you haven't really deeply studied cultural intelligence, you're absolutely allowed to have an opinion, but do not think that your opinion is the right one necessarily, okay? Now, going on to the concept of cultures. So we think of culture as an iceberg. What do you know of that concept itself, of the iceberg theory?
That's see like a small part, no? And then there's much more behind.
Exactly, yeah. So what do you think, there's a small part that's above the water and then a ton of stuff under the water that's invisible. So what part of culture would you say is above the water?
What we visualize,
Good, like what? What kind of things?
like clothes, languages.
Good,
Also, sometimes the way you communicate show you like some part of the culture,
good.
and
Like
you can,
what?
if you are happy, and then you say, this is a happy person, but maybe it's not. It's something that he's communicating to you, but you don't really know what is behind that.
Good. Yeah, you see the facial expressions, you see the body language, but you don't really know what that necessarily means. Good, good. What other parts of culture are above the water?
Maybe religion.
Good. What parts of religion?
Even like the most basic part, like maybe you wear a symbol and you are showing me that you are that religion.
Good. Yes. So it's the visual representation of it. So Jewish men wear kippahs, Muslim women sometimes wear headscarves, Catholic or Christian might wear a cross, etc. And also you see the religious buildings. I walk down the streets of Madrid, I see tons and tons of churches. I don't really see synagogues or mosques. So from that alone, I can make an educated guess about the religion of the country, right? What else? There's so much more. What else would be above the water? Think of the differences that you notice when you go to another country.
Like the perception of gender, the perception of like loving and caring also.
Good. Like
like everything that is about relationships is like, I think is behind our beliefs or what we.
So the public displays of affection, if people are holding hands, if they're kissing, etc. How the concept of a family, you'll see if you only see men with women, or if you do see homosexual couples, you can see something more of the culture. Good. What? Yeah.
Me as a woman, how I have my place in one. For example, I live in China and I had to negotiate with Chinese people, but at the end, my boss was the one that can close the deal because he's the man, so.
Good, yes. And maybe that part is not so obvious from the outside, but what is obvious is, for example, the percentage of men or women at the top of the organizations. And that does say a lot about the culture as well. Good. And also basic things like music, museums, the kind of art, literature, etc. What things would you say are under the water?
Sometimes values. Because
yes. Tell me more.
For example, family, how deep you have a relationship with your family, how important to you it is. I don't know, I don't know the relation you have with them. I don't know if you really want to continue that relation. It's like, I don't know, because I don't know your values about that.
Good. So people's values, what else?
History, maybe. History of the culture, the country and so.
There's a visible history that we see in the textbooks, but then there's a ton of, I call it secret history. Mm-hmm. The history that comes from word of mouth. Right? The history that we're too afraid to put in the textbooks, or that it's too dangerous to put in the textbooks. Good. What else?
I think also beliefs, which is very related to values.
Yes, definitely. Beliefs and values are some of the deepest parts of culture, and they're some of the most difficult to actually see, right? It's everything that's intangible. How about the concept of relationships? Mm-hmm. What does a relationship mean, right? The concept of trust. How is trust developed? And of course, the concept of time. it's not something that we can visibly see above the water. And this is what makes it difficult. And when you think of an iceberg by itself, right, it's usually in this shape. So it's narrow at the top and larger at the bottom, and that large part is under the water. When think of cultures as their own icebergs. Above the water, they might not look like they're touching or clashing, but below the water, they are clashing. Above the water, it may seem like they're in harmony. There's a lot of similarities that are visible. They seem to, they don't contradict each other in any way, but there's something underneath that's just not working, right? And you can't, it's really hard to put a word on that. It's really hard to figure out what that is. That's all the invisible culture that's going on. That's all the invisible cultural dynamics that are based on beliefs and values. Now, it's also really important to mention that not every person in a culture is going to have the same beliefs and values as each other. It's impossible. It's simply tendencies, right? So as we get into the concept of time, I'm gonna show you that there are two general concepts of time across cultures. And even though we'll say that some cultures tend to be this and other cultures tend to be this, definitely does not mean that every single person in that culture is always in this concept or always in this concept, right? Think of it as every individual is their own individual culture, despite their national culture, despite the passports that they have. Each person is their own individual culture. So we are all walking icebergs. Any questions on this?
No.
You are allowed to ask any question, by the way.
Thank you.
So for the next part is remembering that what we're doing now is under the water. The concept of time is under the water, which makes it difficult, untangible, and in some ways very sensitive. This is, I don't know, Alex, if you remember this from the last webinar, this slide.
I don't remember exactly, but I remember that we talked about it. Yes.
Okay, so I was going to see if you wanted to explain it to everyone. If you don't remember it that well, maybe not.
Maybe not.
Okay. So this is a very simple diagram of how our minds work. And there is a connection to cultural intelligence, a very deep connection. First, that light blue part is what you are aware of that you know, right? This is the part that we are completely and totally conscious of, just those two blue parts. The light blue part is things like I know, or I am aware of the fact that I can speak English. I'm aware of the fact that I can speak Spanish. I'm aware of the fact that I know how to cook. I'm aware of the fact that I know cultural intelligence. The second part, the dark blue, is what I'm conscious of that I don't know, right? I am conscious of the fact that I don't know how to drive. I'm conscious of the fact that I don't know anything about Taiwanese culture. I am conscious of the fact that I don't know how to swim, right? Now that yellow part is everything that you are completely and totally unaware of. You don't even know that you're unaware of it, right? You know, when you're driving, there's a part in the mirror that you cannot see. Like there's a part in the back of the car that you can't see, right? Do you know what we call that in English?
Blind spot.
That's it, the blind spot, right? All of this yellow is your blind spot. That is your unconscious. Now, what percentage of your thoughts, actions, reactions, and behaviors do you think are completely unconscious? What percentage?
I mean, 80?
Higher.
99?
How much?
99?
A little bit lower.
85.
95.
Wow.
95. Yeah. Let that sink in for a minute. 95. 95% of our actions, reactions, behaviors, and thoughts are completely and totally unconscious. We are freaking robots. We're walking robots and we don't realize it. It's a terrifying fact. It is an absolutely terrifying fact. It just means that we have to work harder to be aware, right? So this the concept of time is one of these things that we are unaware of. The concept of time is one of these concepts that's in that yellow area. So hopefully my intention for you is to give you a little bit more information to reduce that yellow just a bit, right? I will give you insights, but these insights are actually going to open up more questions for you. Because just like anything else, the more knowledge you have, the more questions you have, right? But this is also to show you that all cultural intelligence concepts are really sensitive, because when it's entering into your unconscious, our bodies know we don't want to go there, because it's touching upon your personal values that you might not even be aware of. And you might, I don't know if you will or not, but you might have reactions of like, no, I don't accept this, right? And that's simply your unconscious telling you this is going against a deep, deep belief and value that you have, right? And a deep, deep value and belief that you have, but you are unaware of that you have. And when you are unaware of it, you simply think it's fact. So because you think it's fact, you reject new information, right? Your mind has the tendency to reject new information because it is certain that what you already have is fact. And that's when you'll go, I don't believe this. I don't want to believe this, okay? No guarantee you're going to be that way. This is simply how our minds usually work. So.
I have a question on that.
Yes.
Like, at what moment or like in our life do we create these facts?
Very good. I think it's until the age of 7 when most of our programming happens.
Okay.
But mind you, I think our brains are not fully developed until the age of, I think, 24. I'm not sure if it's exactly 24, but it's in the early 20s. Like physically, it's not fully developed until then. But our, let's say, socializing, that programming usually happens in the very early years. And how do you think of how that programming happens? I mean, how are we programmed into thinking and believing things?
How?
Yeah, well, where does it come from?
Our parents.
No?
Absolutely. Our parents, and where does our parents' programming come from?
From their parents or their families, yes.
Exactly. So we think of this as your DNA, as your cultural DNA that's passed down, right? And I remember I went to a conference 5 years ago, a cultural intelligence conference, and there was a researcher from Canada there. And I wish to freaking God I got her name, because I've been looking for this forever and I can't seem to find it. But she talked about how the effects of slavery on African Americans is going to last something like 16 generations. And it's going to last 16 generations because of the mental programming. That's intense. I mean, that's fucking scary. So it's a long process to deprogram ourselves. And we can do it. I mean, as a society, it will happen anyway, because the programming will simply change over time. But we can do it ourselves. In the previous webinar, I gave a couple of tools of how you can do it for yourselves, of how you can start deprogramming. So I'm totally not showing off with this, but I really do recommend that you watch the previous webinar just to get some of those tools. But yeah, the concept of time is one of those things that has been programmed into us.
Shiva, was it you who mentioned, I'm not sure if it was in the previous webinar or if I heard it somewhere else, but who mentioned that individual trauma, so something I'm facing now, even if it's not to that huge extent that you've just mentioned before, can last up to 150 years. So I'm passing this over to whoever interacts with me, and then this person, the same, up to a cycle of 150 years. I think, I don't recall where I heard it, but it was something I've seen somewhere as well.
That wasn't me, but I've seen that as well. And it's not only the cultural programming, but there is actual evidence that part of your DNA gets impacted and changed from trauma. And then that DNA is passed down to your kids. My best friend is a neuroscientist, and she she's the one who feeds me this information. And she told me, yeah, I mean, a lot of the trauma that my mother had, because my mother, I mean, she had a lot of shit happen in her life to her. And she was also pregnant with my sister and I in the middle of the Iran-Iraq war. And I'm certain that that has been passed down to us. I mean, my sister and I are always living in fight or flight mode, because everything, our triggers are very active. We constantly get triggered by the smallest things. It took me a very long time to get okay with fireworks, I see a lot of things as threats, and that is a chemical reaction that comes from the trauma. Questions and comments?
I just recall one thing that I was talking with my family, and is that it was something really small, that even the name you put to your baby will affect everything. And sometimes we put the names of our parents or our grandparents, and then you're giving them like some background already just because of the name.
Yeah, you're giving them an entire legacy because of the name. Absolutely. Absolutely. Alex, I feel like you were going to say something.
No, I was just hearing and feeling. Yeah.
Oh, it's intense. And there's a lot of interesting stuff going on with this yellow part. A lot of interesting research happening. I'll see if I can find the article on the DNA that changes with trauma. But it sounds terrifying, but the positive part of it is that we can start to change our own programming. It's getting to a point of self-awareness where you really look inside yourself and start realizing, what are your values? What are your triggers? Where does that come from? And also understanding that everything that has ever happened to us in our personal lives is going to and has impacted our professional lives. There is no separation. We like to think that there is a separation between your professional self and your personal self, but that is not possible. You are one integritous whole. You cannot divide yourself. So it is extremely important to know yourself, to be able to give yourself the best possible chance of succeeding in your professional life as well. We're going completely off topic of time. We are going to get back on track with time in a second. But this is a book, I don't know if you can read it backwards, Dare to Lead by Brene Brown. If you're familiar with Brene Brown, it talks a lot about that. It talks a lot about leading as a human, right? What it means to be human and to lead, and a new type of leadership that's coming into the world, which is integritous leadership, authentic leadership, leading as your whole self, not with a mask. Dare to Lead, it was called, by Brene Brown. Okay, so I'm going to move on in the interest of the concept of time. So because we're diving into this unknown part, there's always 3 basic guidelines that I give. I'm not going to break them down as I normally would, because I think you're going to get it quite quickly. The first one is to simply be coachable, which means listen. And it means to listen with your soldiers down. Your soldiers are your triggers. So when we are speaking to someone and they say something that we don't like, that we don't agree with, right? What's going on in our heads? What do we start doing in our heads?
Disagree.
We disagree and we create?
Like an argument for the answer.
Exactly. We're creating an argument in our heads and we are simply waiting for them to shut up so that we can counteract, right? And those arguments are like bullets, right? And I have little soldiers inside of us who are there to defend us. And our soldiers are not bad. They have very positive intentions. They are there to defend us. But when we hear things that we don't like, those soldiers pick up their weapons. You create the argument. Our argument is the bullets. They put the bullets in the guns and they aim and they're ready to shoot, right? And that shooting looks like disagreeing. It looks like arguing. And I just ask that before you shoot your weapon, you take a minute and you stop and think, why? Why did this bother me so much? That why is connected to a deeper value that you had that maybe you didn't realize you had, right? So always ask yourself, why? Why did this bother me, and why am I letting it bother me? What is the deeper reason? And part of that is the idea of accepting your shit, which means that we are all triggered by things. We are all frustrated and angered by things. And it's very easy to put the blame on someone else. But at the end of the day, it is us who is deciding to be offended, to be angry, to be bothered. It does not mean that if someone is offensive and disrespectful, that that's okay. It doesn't justify the other person's actions. It's simply saying that you are choosing to also get angry, to get offended, to get bothered, right? I know it sounds a bit silly that I'm saying this with a concept like time, but I am not joking. People get really agitated. Okay, so finally, the concept of time. When you think of time, what are the things that come to your head? I want you to just say it without necessarily thinking. What comes to your head when you think of time?
Clock.
Sorry? Clock?
Yeah.
Good. What else?
An hour.
Hour. Good. What else?
Schedule.
Good. More?
Hurry.
Sorry?
Like being in a hurry.
Efficiency.
Hurry. Good. What else?
Being efficient.
Sorry, being what?
Being efficient.
I feel we have trouble understanding. Can you maybe leave a message as well? I'm so sorry.
Definitely. Type.
Something with your microphone.
Sure.
So what else? What else?
Being efficient, I feel says.
Efficient. Okay, great. Oh, I didn't see it. Where's the freaking, why do I not see the?
You should see it. Maybe you have to open it on the bar that is below the screen, like the
Aha, there it
bottom
is. Got
bar.
it.
You can open
Okay.
it. Yeah.
Perfect. I see it. Being efficient. Good. What else?
Respect other people's time.
Good. More?
Alarm clock.
Good. More? Late or early? Good. What else?
Stress.
Death? Good. What else?
Stress.
Stress. I was like, death. Yeah, that works too. Stress. Good. I know it sounds terrible. I thought you said death and I said good.
No, I see it.
Well, yes, we don't have time, so we have to leave now.
That's true, yes. What else?
To finish something.
Good. Finish. I'm going to start just typing in. What else? Oh, come on. Anything.
Relativeness.
I can't.
Delivery.
Commitment.
Relativity. Sorry. Say that again.
Delivery.
Delivery.
Like meditation, sports,
Good.
life,
What was this? The last one?
life itself. It's like
Good.
a period of time. Sun.
Good.
Even history.
Good. What do you do with your time? How about that?
Yeah, your hobbies, work.
Good.
Run.
Yeah, work.
Sleep.
Good. Ooh. You realize that your responses show me your programming, right?
Yeah.
What else, ladies? How do you measure time?
Hours and minutes, like with the clock.
What else? What other measures of time?
Tasks or objectives.
Year, good, thank you. Month, good. Good. Task and objectives are also good. This is all perfect. Okay. I'm going to stop there. Looking at this list, would you say that there is one specific definition of time?
No.
No.
No. There is absolutely no specific definition of time. That's why it's simply a concept. It is different for everyone. Literally, everyone has a different concept of time. Maybe not a drastically different concept, but your time is not the same as my time. Now, what cultural intelligence researchers have tried to do is at least separate it into two tendencies. So looking at the list that we have here, how would you divide this into two different tendencies?
Like I divide some that are like based in our daily life, like working or doing our things, and then the other one when we are more like philosophical, like the time, like the period that you are into, like I don't know. I see like those two.
Okay, good, good.
I will also divide between trying to be efficient and try to enjoy time.
Good, good. Anyone else? It is basically a combination of what you both said. So on the one hand, we have the concept of time as money. All right, you've heard this expression before as well, I'm guessing. Time is money. People who believe that time is money are called monochronic. All right, what does mono mean?
One dimension.
Equal, like.
Exactly, one dimension, right? And one definition, one concept of time, monochronic. The other group, really interesting, thinks of time in terms of relationships and humans. And that's called polychronic. Poly meaning
More like all or a lot of perspectives.
exactly, many versus one. And this is where the under part of the icebergs come and clash, because the behaviors are very different for monochronic versus polychronic, and the concept of time touches on things that you would not necessarily even expect. But general definition, monochronic people really do believe that time is money. And so, well, you tell me, how do you think that would affect the way that you work and live if you think that time is money?
Workaholics.
Workaholics, good. What else?
Like also in personal relationships, no? Like if you are not giving me something really in this moment that we are sharing, like I'm not interested in you.
Good. They look at people in terms of value that they can get. Good. What else?
They measure everything.
Yeah, they measure everything. Good. Good.
Like, so in a business, for example, you will find more like something that is related to money more than maybe giving it more time. That is more cuidado, like taking care more of a thing, and even if it's more expensive, like that difference.
Yeah. And how about those who are polychronic, those who define time in terms of relationship? How do you imagine they would work and live?
I think they will be more patient.
Good. Oh, wait, one second. Like to work efficiently and not spend a lot of time on socializing. Yes, efficiency is huge for them, and socializing only if it gives them value. Good. All right. So for polychronic?
They really care about people and
Good.
not only the result.
Good. They care more about the person than the result. Good. What else?
So for me, what comes to my mind is like coming late because maybe there has been an issue with someone, so you are like working on that.
Yes. I have literally sitting right in front of me. You can't see the other side, but my office is almost like a fishbowl. It's glass, and my team is sitting on the other side of the glass right now. And one of my team members is from Colombia and the other one is from the Canary Islands. Now, the tendency is that the person from the Canary Islands would be, which one do you think? Polychronic or monochronic?
Polychronic.
Polychronic.
Exactly. And the one from Colombia?
As well?
Polychronic.
As well.
As well, yes. However, for some reason, well, again, because every individual is their own culture. Hector, who is from the Canary Islands, he's very monochronic, right? And Juan, who's from Colombia, is very polychronic. He is late every single day. Every single day. And I know it's because maybe he was, WhatsApping with his family or his friends, and he didn't, or he was having a phone call, or he was, his flatmate wanted some advice or whatever last minute. And he can't say no because the relationship is much more important. Maintaining that relationship is extremely important. He's not even aware that it's important, but it completely impacts behaviors without him even realizing. Right? And they have major issues between them because one is always late, one is always on time. And that affects how they communicate, that affects project management, that affects everything.
Yeah.
So, yep, someone was going to say something? No?
I can say, I wasn't going to say what I can say. I imagine that the polychronic is a lot more mindful about taking the whole experience of this moment as it is.
Yes. Yes. They are living in the now kind of people, the polychronic, because again, it's the relationship that counts. It is the relationship that comes first. So we're going to go now into some basic differences between the two. I'm checking on time. We have 20 minutes. Okay. Limited versus unlimited. Which one do you think is polychronic? Do they think that time is limited or unlimited?
Unlimited.
Unlimited, exactly. Yeah. They think of this as, for them, time is something never ending, right? It started before us and it's just never going to end. So imagine time as a line going through space. And if it's a never ending line, right? Then let's do this. I'm going to see if I can share something else, the whiteboard. Okay, you can all see the whiteboard?
Yes.
Yeah. So let's imagine that this line is time, right? Never ending, goes on forever. If today is right here, where do you think for a polychronic person is tomorrow? Where would I put the line of tomorrow on this?
Maybe you won't.
Do you think a polychronic person really understands the difference between today and tomorrow?
Not really.
No. It's on the same point because they have such a helicopter view of time, right? That today, tomorrow, it's the same thing. If I was supposed to deliver a document to you or prepare a presentation for you today, well, I can have it tomorrow as well. Because in my mind, it's on the same line, right? Even next week is on the same line. Maybe in 1 month is a little bit over. In 3 months is a little bit over. But that's actually my perspective. So it's so close to each other, it doesn't matter, right? That is how polychronic people perceive time. It is an infinite, unlimited resource, right? So today, tomorrow, it doesn't matter. And this is very frustrating for monochronic people, as you can imagine. For monochronic people, it's the complete opposite. Time is limited. So we have to take advantage of every single second. They don't have that bird's eye helicopter view of time. For them, it's the opposite. It's like this, And so for them, I should actually go back to this, that for them, the difference is this line is not the entire universe of time. This line is maybe just today. And they divide their hours, right? From 9 till 12, I will do these things. From 12 till 2, I will do these things. They compartmentalize their time. Whereas polychronic people, I'm sorry, what? I can do that for a day? Why would I do that for a day? Time is unlimited. Why would I need to compartmentalize my day? It just doesn't occur to them. All right, any questions or comments so far? There's still much more content to go through, but this is your first introduction to that concept.
I have a question. Is it possible to be a little bit of both?
Absolutely, yes. So this is another thing, going back and forth. Let me clear all. So we think of time just like anything else is relative, right? So let's imagine that on the one hand here, we have monochronic, and on the other hand here, we have polychronic, right? This is 0, and this is 10, which means extreme for monochronic, and down here, 10, extreme for polychronic, yeah? Everyone is somewhere on the spectrum. So it's, again, not saying that, ooh, all Indians are polychronic. They're all at that one end. No, that's not true. In general, there's a tendency for them to be on the polychronic side, but they could also just be like right here on the polychronic side. So that's in terms of cultures. As an individual, absolutely. You could be polychronic in your personal life and monochronic in your professional life, or vice versa, right? We go in and out of both very often. We have a tendency and a preference for one, but for circumstances, for life, or simply we change and we can also go to the other. Companies are also like this. So think of this, a manufacturing company, where do you think they would be? Monochronic or polychronic?
In a company?
In a manufacturing company.
Sorry. Totally monochronic.
Absolutely. Because literally time is money. Every piece that they produce is money. They know exactly how much time it takes to produce one small piece. And they know how much money they lose if a machine breaks down because of every single piece that they cannot create. Right? If you work for a manufacturing company, you have a manufacturing company as a client, you're going to have to work in monochronic style because that is the language of time that they understand. Mm-hmm. That is the language of time that they work in. Whereas if you work for a consulting company maybe, or any company that has more to do with human relationships, then you got to shift to the polychronic. Mm-hmm. It's a good thing to keep in mind depending on which kinds of clients you're working with. Their time concept is going to be different as an organization and also the individuals that you're working with. There's also no guarantee that a company that tends to be more monochronic is only going to hire monochronic people. But also keep in mind, in hiring practices, when we're recruiting people, we are always unconsciously recruiting people who are the same as us. So this is not only true of gender, it's true of everything. I think that the best kind of workers are those who have deadlines and stick to them. And that's what I'm looking for as a good employee. Whereas my colleague Juan, for him, it's the opposite. A good employee is someone who knows how to build relationships, develop those, and maintain those. So that's what he looks for when he's hiring people for his team. And sorry, to go back to your original question, yes, you can definitely be both. And we're always on the spectrum anyway. It's not that you are either here or here. Whichever side you're on, you're somewhere along that spectrum. More questions? Okay. So polychronic time is unlimited, monochronic time is limited, and therefore it has to be measured. Industrialization. So this is a bit of history. This played a huge role in shaping the time concept of different cultures. Think of which Western cultures were the first to industrialize?
Great Britain.
Northern.
Great Britain, the northern countries, yeah. The Netherlands, Germany. Where else?
France.
France, a little bit less. I mean, it first really started in
UK.
the UK, exactly, and then it went down. And also the United States. And guess which countries are the most monochronic? Those ones. And why? Because of industrialization, because manufacturing became and was and is an industry that is very time sensitive, time focused. In fact, you know, that the town centers, when factories starting to become the main source of work for many towns and villages, that was the first time the town hall had a clock.
To get the train.
To get the train or to get to the factory on time. So you always knew what time it was, no matter where you were in the village. You knew if you were late or on time for work. But other countries like India and China, they didn't need to industrialize as quickly because they had the physical manpower, right? And they were and have been farming industries for much longer. Did you notice that they are extremely polychronic?
Yeah.
And that's also to show that it can change, and it changes very much with the type of industry that you have. Thinking of, so even the United States, the northern part of the United States was industrialized. The southern part wasn't. It was plantations. It was farms, and it was farms that were run by abused and free labor of slaves. They didn't need to industrialize. Their concept of time is a lot slower. The concept of time in the northeast of the United States is much, much faster. New York, obsessed with time. Right? Changing of the seasons. Going back to the idea of the Canary Islands. So for those of you who are familiar with the Canary Islands, do they have seasons?
No.
They do not. They do not have seasons. Saudi Arabia, does Saudi Arabia have seasons? No. The Emirates, do they have seasons? No, they do not. Think of this. If you cannot see the changing of the seasons, you literally are not seeing time pass by. When you have the 4 seasons, you see time passing by, you see time changing. If you don't have the 4 seasons, you don't see it. Cultures that do not have, especially the warmer cultures that do not have seasons, have a much different, relaxed, polychronic sense of time because they don't see time passing by. And I said specifically warm cultures for a reason. Why do you think that colder cultures are going to have a stronger sense of time?
Because they know that it's going to end this period, so they need to finish something, because if not, later they cannot continue. Like, for example, when you cultivate something,
exactly,
I have to work on this now because tomorrow I won't have anything to eat. That's
exactly. Exactly. So they are more aware of time simply for the sake of survival, right? The next point, measure of time. So how do you think monochronic people measure time? In what increments? I mean, you all mentioned some, like you mentioned minutes, hours, etc. How do you think monochronic people measure time?
Days.
Sorry?
Days.
In days?
I even will say like short period, middle term, and long term. Like they will put everything on context.
Yes, but their perception of time and their measurement of time is much more minute. So they're going to measure in terms of, yes, days, hours, minutes, seconds. Whereas polychronic people They take a step back, and for them it's weeks, months, quarters, years. Right? And the question I want to ask, how does individual personality traits like introvert, extrovert contribute to this concept of time? Good question. I actually have no idea. I don't know if the concept of being an introvert versus extrovert necessarily has an impact on your concept of time. It's not a connection that I thought of. I do think, I'm trying to think of any concept, any personality would impact that. I'm sure they do. It's just simply not something I've thought of. Good question. Always a good question when it's definitely not something I thought of. So again, you'll notice that those who are polychronic, it's very difficult for them to do project planning in minute detail. It's very difficult for them to set deadlines that are a week or a day, or, you know, they think in terms of longer chunks of time. Whereas monochronic think in terms of smaller bits of time. And the way that they do projects is, remember, polychronic people, they want to maintain the relationship. So what do you think is their relationship with the word no?
Very
It
bad.
doesn't work.
It doesn't work. It's very bad. Exactly. They don't like to say no. No is seen as a negative word that breaks harmony in a relationship, and they want to maintain harmony. So this is a very typical thing of someone who's polychronic. And I'm guilty of this. I've become much more monochronic now, but a good 10 years ago when I started, I was very polychronic. I remember my boss asking me, you know, there's a really cool project. I'd love for you to take it on. This is how it looks like. How long do you think it would take you to launch, right? And I look at the project and I think, okay, I think it'll take me about 1 month to do it. I'm super excited. Great. Wonderful. 1 month comes and I realize, fuck, I'm not going to make this deadline. It's a deadline I set myself, which is even worse. What the hell? And it happened over and over and over again. I was convinced I could do it in this amount of time, but then I realized I need this amount of time. I'm like, why don't I learn my lesson? I don't understand. And I put in all different ways of trying to figure out how much time the project would take, and I still always got it wrong. And then I realized, wait a minute, it's because I'm actually doing like 4 projects at the same time, because I don't say no. So if I was only doing that one project, yes, it would take 1 month to do. But when I'm doing 4 projects, it's going to take a lot longer to do, right? A monochronic person, an extreme monochronic person, would not say no to multitasking. They would not say yes to multitasking. They would say, no, I can't take this project on until I finish this one first, right? They have stricter boundaries with their time. But then polychronic people find them to be rude and not team players. You know, I need your support. I was hoping to help get you on board with this project. It's a great opportunity for you. I don't understand why you're saying no. And the monochronic person is thinking, I don't fucking have time, and I want to do a good job, and I know I can't do the job I want to do if I have this many projects on. So they start to clash underneath the water, right? Because they're simply not understanding that both of them ultimately want the same thing. They want to work well together. They want to meet their objectives. They want to maintain the relationship and get results, but their way of doing it is just very different. Questions, comments so far? Okay. And the last part of this slide is that it's relative. So meaning that we are all on a spectrum, right? We know that we're all on a spectrum. Oh, hold on, ignore this. We're all on a spectrum, but depending on where we are, we're going to see other people as being polychronic or monochronic, even if they're the same as us. So I'll explain this with this one chart here. Looking at these countries here, and I want to be clear, I'm not stereotyping. I'm simply saying what the research shows in terms of tendencies. All right? Again, no way in hell is every person in this culture going to fit into what we're putting in here right now. So let's say Spain. Do you think Spain is more polychronic or monochronic?
Polychronic.
Polychronic.
Good. How about Italy?
Polychronic.
Polychronic.
The UK?
Monochronic.
Nigeria?
Polychronic.
Polychronic.
Switzerland?
Monochronic.
Saudi Arabia?
Polychronic.
Polychronic.
US?
Mono.
Monochronic.
Japan?
I would say
Mono.
monochronic.
Polychronic.
Which one? Which one?
I would say monochronic.
And you'd say polychronic. Okay, so there's division. Russia?
Monochronic.
Okay, let's see.
Polychronic.
Let's see. So notice they're also in different parts of the lines, right? So according to the research, the tendency is that the UK, US, Sweden, Japan, Sweden wasn't on there, was it? Oops.
Or Brazil.
The UK, US, Sweden, Japan, and Switzerland are monochronic. But notice, Switzerland is at the extreme left. Think of this. What are the Swiss famous for manufacturing?
Clocks.
Clocks. Exactly.
Yeah.
They are extremely, extremely monochronic. When I was working with Novartis and we had webinars, they started exactly on time. Like when the clock changed, and it was like so ingrained in them, they didn't realize that they were doing it. I was like, you don't wait for anyone. You just fucking start at exactly the moment, don't you? It's so deeply programmed, they had no idea. And then we look on the right side and we see Spain, Italy, Russia, Brazil, Saudi Arabia, and Nigeria. But again, notice it's on a spectrum, right? So let's think the United States. I'm from the US, so I naturally think that everyone who's on the polychronic side is equally polychronic. I don't see a difference, right? Spain is exactly the same as Saudi Arabia for me. No difference, right? But someone from Spain will see the difference. Someone from Spain will realize, oh God, Saudi Arabia is so fucking polychronic, without realizing that Spain itself is polychronic. Same for me in the United States. I will look at Switzerland and go, oh my God, they are such assholes with time, for fuck's sake, right? But guess what? Everyone from Spain thinks that about me. This is what I mean by it's also relative. So for me, apparently I am monochronic, but I don't consider myself monochronic. I think the Swiss are monochronic because it's simply where we are on the spectrum. Right? Where you're standing on the line is what gives you your experience. It's how you experience things. This is also to say it's not so black and white. It is relative. It completely depends on who you are, where you are. Now, a few examples, and I'm aware that we are supposed to be ending now. So,
but we're not in Switzerland.
but we're not in Switzerland.
It's okay if we extend a few minutes, as long as everyone is also available to continue.
I can continue. For me, it's okay.
Me too.
Okay, it'll be 10 minutes at most, I promise. Okay, so really basic, simple examples, and you're gonna laugh at some of them. This is a line. In what kind of culture does a line look like this?
Polychronic.
Monochronic.
Monochronic. Notice it's ordered, right? So this is one more aspect of monochronic versus polychronic. Monochronic, organization, order, clear lines, separation. People are not touching each other. There's a really great video, a really great TED Talk that shows like standing for a bus in, I think in like Norway, and people are like 5 feet away from each other. Now, how about this? Looking at the left-hand side, polychronic, there is no freaking line. Now, I can only really speak to my experience here in Spain. Karen, I don't know, you've been to Spain before?
Yeah, I was living there.
Great. So you've all been to a mercado here, no?
Yes.
Not a supermarket, a mercado. There is no fucking line. It's just a bunch of people standing in front of the stall, and you're like, if you're a foreigner, you have no idea what's going on. You just see a bunch of people. You see a ticket machine with numbers, but no one takes the numbers. So you have no idea what's going on. It took me like 1 year to realize you have to ask who's last online. And then you just pay attention to them. That would never happen in a monochronic society. They would always have a clear line, right? But polychronic has a different concept of space as well. Space and touch. A lot of things are kind of intertwined in this. And also the idea of multitasking versus monotasking. Polychronic people believe that they can multitask. So for example, if you go to India and you are at the airport counter, there will not be a straight line. There will be 10 people around the counter trying to ask the airline hostesses to help them. Can you change my seat? Can you upgrade me? Blah, blah. And the airline hostesses are actually aware of everyone, right? And they are going to try to deal with 2 customers, 3 customers at the same time. Whereas in a monochronic culture, again, no, they will tell you, excuse me, can you please form a line? And polychronic people get very confused when that happens. They go, my God, they're so rude. We get offended by each other simply because we don't understand the intentions of the other. Neither side is being rude, and polychronic are not lazy. It's simply difference in perspective. That's it, literally it, and values. So this one, polychronic or monochronic?
Polychronic.
Polychronic. He's doing 3 things at the same time. He's cooking, he's on the computer, and he's taking care of the baby. How about this one?
Monochronic.
Monochronic, yes. Okay. Between these two, which one's polychronic and which one's monochronic?
But one question with that, so for example, for a polychronic, if like personal relationships and so are so important, why do they focus on more than one thing?
Because everything has equal importance to them. So if I've asked Juan to do something and he said yes, and Hector asked him to do something as well and he said yes, he's going to divide himself constantly between those two because those 2 tasks are related to the humans behind them who's asked for them.
Okay.
And also because they really do think they can do a lot more in a certain amount of time. So for example, and this is completely true of me, and this shows both my mono and polychronic. So part of me is super monochronic, but then, you know, I'm getting ready to go out. I'm meeting my friends in 1 hour, which means that I have to leave the house in 30 minutes. And I'm dressed, I'm ready, but I genuinely think in those 30 minutes that I can do the dishes, put on my makeup, and very quickly clean the bathroom before I leave. I genuinely think I'm capable of doing that. No human is fucking capable of doing that, but my mind doesn't understand that. After 35 years of living, I still think I can, because that's how deep that polychronic programming is, right? So it's the connection to the people, but it's also the concept of time really is that I can do a lot in a short amount of time because I just don't understand what 1 hour looks like. I don't understand what 30 minutes looks like. Polychronic people genuinely don't understand that. And it's not ignorance, it's not stupid, nothing like that. It's literally just a different perspective. Now, so 2 minutes, we'll go through these and then I will wrap up. Well, I'll send Alex this PowerPoint. At the end of the PowerPoint, there are some tips and tricks of how to deal with both sides, okay? More than anything, it just takes patience. And it takes learning about yourself, understanding which one you are. Because if you realize that you are polychronic, then you will understand why certain people piss you off in terms of time, because they're simply the opposite. And if you're monochronic, you'll also understand why certain people piss you off, because they're the opposite. Right? So you have to understand what you are first before you can start to work better with other people. Right? It's finding how can you adapt to them, And if you need to have a conversation with them, you will at least be able to understand what their perspective is. Okay? So, finishing a task well or finishing a task on time? Which one's polychronic?
The first one?
Exactly. Polychronic wants to do the task well. Monochronic, it doesn't mean that they don't want to do it well, but if they have a deadline, they really need to stick to it, right? How about this one? It would be rude not to take a phone call or to ignore a visitor who drops by.
Polychronic.
Polychronic.
100%. So during meetings, if the phone rings, they will answer it. They're not being rude to you in their heads. In their heads, they're also not being rude to the person who's calling them. They need to take that phone call, right? Focusing on the task is more important than focusing on the people. That's obvious. Monochronic, right? In a meeting, it's normal and natural to have digressions and distractions. They are inevitable.
Polychronic.
Polychronic, exactly. A monochronic person will not allow distractions. They have an agenda, they stick to it. Even if something very important comes up, if it's not on the agenda, they will say, we're not talking about it now. We'll put it on the agenda for the next time. Being people-oriented is more beneficial in the long term. Polychronic. I have a lot of polychronic focus stuff, I realized. So then what are the, oh, hold on. I think I wasn't supposed to have that. And this last one, the slide before I wasn't supposed to have. Alex is looking uncomfortable because we are 10 minutes past.
No.
No, okay, sorry.
sorry. Something that showed in my screen.
No.
And I was looking, sorry.
So a few more things, the concept of trust. How do you think that trust is built for monochronic people?
If you are on time?
Yes.
Results, no?
Yep. Results and doing things on time. You know, that your past performance is an indication of your future performance. Monochronic people, when they're hiring, they want to see your CV. They want to see your references. They need to see the results. Whereas polychronic people, the CV, not so important. They need to know you as a human, as an individual. And this is much deeper than most people realize, because it just happens that the majority of polychronic cultures tend to be countries that have had very unstable politics, right? Iran is extremely polychronic as well. Well, I wouldn't say it's extreme. It's definitely on the polychronic side. We have the 4 seasons. We do see time passing, but we are very relationship oriented, and trust and time go together. We only trust people that we know, because really in our country, we don't know who we can trust, right? Cultures that are polychronic, unfortunately, tend to have more unstable governments. So the concept of trust for them has to be associated with people. Your fucking resume does not matter, because you might have been an undercover something. You might have been involved in something. You might be a spy. You don't know, right? Lateness, we already brought it up. You're allowed to be late in polychronic, and monochronic, absolutely not. And in fact, in some polychronic cultures, being late is expected. It is expected.
Mm-hmm.
I invite people over for dinner. I'm like, yeah, around 9 o'clock. I actually get pissed off when people come at 9 o'clock. Because 9 o'clock is when I start to cook.
Yes.
And they're there and I'm still cooking. I'm like, dude, you were supposed to come at 9:45. And they're like, you said 9 o'clock. I'm like, yeah, but everyone knows you don't come on time. Whereas for a monochronic person, 9 o'clock is not even 9 o'clock. What time is it? What time should you be there if they say 9 o'clock?
5 minutes before.
5 minutes before, exactly. Same goes for meetings, right? On time is before time for monochronic. For polychronic, late. In Brazil, it's especially if you're someone who wants to be important, look important, or you are important, you do not show on time for meetings. Why? What is the perception? You're from Brazil. No, you're from Portugal.
I'm from Portugal, but it's the same culture in that aspect.
Well, what's the concept? If you come on time to a meeting, what might people think of you?
You're nervous. You're really dependent on the other person. It's a power issue.
Yes, exactly. You're in the weaker position, right? And you're obviously not busy enough. You're not important enough. Otherwise, you would be late because you're late because something important and busy was happening for you before.
And this meeting was the most important thing in my day. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. So you have to show up late, right? It looks bad if you are on time. Third point, controlling time. I think this one's obvious. Monochronic need to control it. Polychronic accept that time is a concept of nature and we cannot control nature. Digressions and interruptions we talked about, and borrowing and lending money. How do you think monochronic people feel about borrowing and lending?
That they will get paid.
They do not like it. They do not like it, and they're very strict on it, right? If I lend you something, I need to know when I'm going to get it back. If I lend you money, I'm probably going to give you interest on it because my time is my money. So by lending you money, it's not just one thing I'm giving you. I'm not just giving you the money. I'm also giving you my time that I've already spent, right? So it feels heavier than just the money. And polychronic people,
They won't even maybe ask. They will just give it to you.
exactly. They're more likely to give it to you. And it's not always because they want to. In fact, they probably don't want to, and they might not even be able to. But it's difficult for them to say no, and for them, if you need it, then they feel obliged to give it to you. Right? So there's a need to be careful in there as well, because if someone is incapable of saying the word no, one, it's, please, I hate when people say, well, that they should just learn to say no. They are saying no in many different ways. They're just not using the word no, right? And if you're not hearing them, then that's also your problem. But if you know that someone is polychronic, be careful what you're asking of them. It is difficult for them to say the word no. So be careful what you're asking of them, and really pay attention to their body language, their tone of voice, how they respond, to see if it's an emphatic, yeah, sure, definitely, or if it's, oh, okay. There's a difference, right? Okay, I'm gonna finish up here. What I'm gonna send is this part, well, I'll send the whole document, but how we might reconcile is the basic tips and tricks and things to keep in mind when you're working with each one. And also, you can learn about this by yourselves simply by typing in polychronic versus monochronic. There's a ton of information out there. I've just kind of compiled some of the more interesting parts, but there's really a lot of information that you can find to learn more about each, and also to learn tips and tricks about working with each. So that's it. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Well, my question was even like that, like how can you manage these different personalities or type of concept of time when you are working with someone, or you have a partner, or maybe your team, and you know that we are different, but how you can manage that?
It's tough. It's really tough. First and foremost, know yourself, know yourself, know yourself. Because if you don't know yourself, then you also can't explain to the other person what your perspective is. So I'm thinking right now that I need to have a deeper conversation with Juan, because I've been super pissed off at him for being late every single day. And I know this stuff. Like, remember, I'm a cultural intelligence expert, and still I fuck up. So it's a lifelong practice and a lifelong learning. What I'm going to do now is sit down with him and, tell him, this is my concept of time. This is what it means to me. And this is how I think it means to you, but I want to hear from you. What does time mean for you? And then just put things in place. I can't change him. So if I want him to be at the office at 11 o'clock, then I should maybe change his schedule to 10:30. And I'm not joking. I mean, if I have a meeting, I do this now. I remember we had a meeting and I said, we're going to start at 3 o'clock, but really, I actually had a phone call scheduled at 3 o'clock because I knew he wouldn't be around until 3:30. And it's just, people think sometimes that's like a nasty way, and I go, no, it's not. It's really just knowing the person, and I'm not going to let myself get frustrated. It's how he is. It's simply different from me. And I can't make him change to my ways. I can't make anyone do anything. All I can do is adapt my ways to him as much as I'm able to. So I also, when we have a meeting, I leave plenty of space for any interruptions, for anything that comes up. But now I don't get frustrated, because I used to have meetings or think that meetings are only going to be 30 minutes, and then it would be an hour and a half. Now I just schedule them for an hour and a half and keep the same agenda as I would for 30 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Also,
yeah.
Sorry. I was going to ask, because there has to be either, I don't know, you have to learn also ways of communicating with people that are different than you. Of course, people not expecting on people to change, because maybe this would be a wrong assumption and a principle of why I'm doing this, but of communicating why this has this kind of impact and why I would like it to be different. So not that I'm right or not, but how can we have this this conversion point? No.
Well, I don't know if you can ever have that middle ground, because it completely depends on the other person. Right? Well, it depends on both sides. It depends on both of you being able to come and meet in the middle. But the way that you can communicate it is, there's a type of language called nonviolent communication. And nonviolent communication is all about, being able to express your wants, your needs, and your emotions in a way that doesn't put blame, responsibility, shame, guilt on the other person.
Based on facts.
So based on facts, and also putting it on you. So it's, you made me angry. No, I got angry. Well, this action happened and I got angry, right? Lateness in general is something that bothers me, and I'm aware that it bothers me. Therefore, it is my shit, let's say, right? And it bothers me because I feel that it's a lack of respect to my time and my work. Again, it's my feeling. It's not a fact. It's simply how I feel about it. Mm-hmm. And it's not putting it on the other person. I'm not saying I get angry when you're late. No, lateness, because it's not just him. If anyone were late, I would be angry. Mm-hmm. So it's learning to communicate in a way that does not blame, shame, point the finger at, or reduce the other person. And that means always speaking from the perspective of you, and never saying that you made me feel this way, you did this. No. And nonviolent communication is the style of communication, the tool to help with that. Sweet. Okay. What else?
For me, like a question that comes to my mind is like, who has to, I don't know in the word in English, ceder?
Mm-hmm. Who's the one who has to change, basically? No?
Yeah.
You do, because you know this now.
Okay.
The person who has the awareness is the only one who's capable of doing it. You don't have to. No one has to do anything. But when you have the awareness, you have the tools and you have the ability. And then it's your choice. And you can also teach it. I mean, I really think it's a great thing if you have a team and you work with people, or if you work with clients, you have a setup. Actually set up, how do you want to work together? One of the things that I do with my team is and I don't do this with clients, which I should. One thing I do with my team is I have an open, honest conversation about our triggers. So the things that bother us, frustrate us, annoy us, our preferences in terms of working style. And then we see at least where might there be gaps and where there might be tension. And then we talk through, okay, how can we work that through? Mm-hmm. And it's an ongoing process, because time is not something that I talked about in the beginning. And I'm realizing it is an issue and I need to bring it up, and we have a conversation about what time means for each of us. It could be simply teaching people the concept of polychronic and monochronic so they have the awareness and the ability. And then you're both more equal in terms of who is going to, which side has to bend.
Mhm.
Okay, perfect. Thanks.
I don't know if anyone else has questions. I mean, I know that everyone has questions because I also have questions myself. I think that's the result you would like, right? Shiva? That's the
Yes.
outcome you were looking for. But maybe if maybe we'll close here. Thank you so much for all of you for being here, for Shiva, for your great generosity and making this subject so enjoyable to be part of this conversation, because I think this is more of a conversation style, which I'm very happy to have. I do invite you to share questions or comments about this either in the community, or if you want to contact Shiva. She's also in the community, but maybe if you want to send her an email, you can ask me and I'll put you in contact together, because I know that these subjects can be, I don't know if there's an expression for this in English, but you just, as you are pulling the topics, a lot of more comes out.
Yep.
So I really, really appreciate your openness as well in making this more of a conversation style. I think we constantly underestimate the impact of these small things, or what it seems to be a small thing in our daily lives and the way we interact, and the results that come from those interactions, communication styles, behaviors, our triggers, and what this impacts in our work. So I do hope that through the next weeks, we'll be all thinking about, oh, this is what we were discussing.
I hope so.
Yes. Before we close, I just wanted to ask an exercise that we usually do, which is just share with Shiva a word that we retain from this conversation, or that is in our mind regarding the past hour and a half, more or less, that we were here. I can start, maybe. I have two words. I have empathy and triggers.
Oh, good.
I will say relativity and patience.
I would say understanding environment situations.
Good, good, good.
Ifya?
Ah, okay.
Understanding.
Oh, and thank you to Afia.
Thank you for all of you for joining, for waking up early, for not having a lunchtime and being here, for your generosity, Shiva, once again. I will share this recording in the community, so you can go to the event and see the recording later the day. I will send it to you as well, Shiva, and the presentation is when you send me the deck.
Send it now.
I hope you have an amazing day, all of you. I hope to see you in the next webinars and events to come, and thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.